Now that the Republican Party is really gone and it's been taken over by the MAGA Party, I think of it as the MAGA Party, because the values that the Republican Party had, or at least that I thought they had, are completely different than MAGA values. So, because of that, I'd like to propose a new third party. I think third parties are not likely, but stay with me here for a minute. So I'm going to suggest that the name of the Founders Party. And the reason I'm suggesting the Founders Party is not because I admire the lives of the founders. I mean, they lived in a time of despotism, and so for them, giving the vote to uh, property holding males and only property holding males seemed progressive, right? Because, it was all kings. So, anyway, the idea of the founding fathers is what this new party admires and tries to bring to life. So, the idea of the founders was that the political power of the country would stay in the hands of the citizens of the country. And so the representatives in the House of Representatives are supposed to be able to stay close to the constituents they represent, close enough to represent them in Congress. And all of the power, really, of the government is supposed to be in the House because the real power is supposed to be with the people. And the House is the closest to representing the people and should be the closest to the people. So now a representative in the House represents about 700,000 people, so they can't really stay close to the. So with the Founders Party would always try to really reflect the will of the constituents. So first of all, if you were a member of the Founders Party, you would take being a citizen seriously, and you would recognize that a citizen of America has certain obligations. One of those obligations is to stay informed of the current events and situations, and to vote. And the reason you stay informed is to vote purposefully, intelligently. And so that's the role of the citizen. So, it's your pursuit of happiness is limited by your need to stay informed and your need to always vote. That's a citizen's job, okay? And then the uh, Founders Party will make some effort to get the representatives closer to their constituents, even though there's 700,000 of them. So we can try different things. I mean, we could add more representatives and have them represent fewer constituents, but the concern I have about that is that there's an awful lot of members of Congress already, and I think the more and more representatives there are, the more difficult it's going to be for the people who represent you to have a meaningful role in formulating the legislation that the House is responsible to provide. So makes it more difficult to represent you. So let's start by using modern technology to try to get closer to the constituents instead of adding representatives. And let's first see if we can dramatically improve the connection between American citizens and the representatives who represent them using technology. See if that works, and if it doesn't, then we'll have to do something else, because the idea of the Founders Party is really to keep the power of government in the hands of the citizens of this country. So that's the agenda of the Founders Party, because that's what the founders intended. So we'll do what we can to do that. So uh, certainly we will believe in the freedom of the press. We think the founders were right about that. The press plays an important role in keeping citizens informed, and it has to be a no fear, no favor press. Is that the Times slogan? I forget. But anyway, um, I think if you're a member of the Founders Party, you have to value honor in a way that I think is, let's say, not built in to the current population in 2026, But I think in 1776, I think individual honor meant more. It's just my impression. Meant more to individuals. I mean, when they what they said was that they were going to pledge their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor to the country, which I get from that their honor was sacred to them. It was an extremely important part. And certainly there's none of that in the people running our government today. I mean, even if you're a Trump lover, and I certainly am not, then you have to admit that Trump is not an honorable person. He doesn't behave in an honorable way, and I don't think honor means anything to him at all. In fact, he called, at least it's my understanding, he called serving in the military, people who served in the military, losers. To me, serving in the military is an honor. I mean, I think, I think the military there are people who are putting their well-being on the line for the country. I mean, to me, that's a very high calling and an extremely honorable thing to do. And I admire such people very, very much. I myself did not serve. I lived through, I was of draft age during Vietnam. And joining the military, I was also a war protester, so joining the military became a very unpopular thing to do among the people I associated with. And I was very much against the war in Vietnam. I was a war protester, so which was interesting for me because I've been a Republican forever. I guess I'm not a Republican now because there really is no Republican Party. It's the MAGA Party, and I don't agree with the MAGA people at all. In fact, I find their ideas insane. I mean, they say America first, as if America wasn't completely first. I mean, come on. Up until the Trump administration, America ran the world. I mean, we were the most influential member of NATO. NATO is a gift to the United States that is a force multiplier. And, Trump just demonstrates his ignorance with almost everything he does. I mean, tariffs, that's an incredibly ignorant idea. I mean, and it's certainly not Republican. Republicans are free market people. Right, and the Founders Party is a free market party. Okay, I know I think Keynes had a lot to contribute to economics, so I am much more amenable to government regulation probably certainly than normal conservative, what I think of as conservatives would be, because I think regulation plays an important role. Here's an example for me. I mean, the social media has gone down the path that because number of clicks have financial implications, they've gone down the path of developing algorithms that get people more and more emotionally involved in what they're reading, that it has created this incredible divisiveness, and a lot of it is at least misleading, and a lot of it is outright lies. And Congress should be preventing that. I mean, I thought the government's regulation of the press um, was responsible and important. I mean, you couldn't lie. I mean, my father was a newspaperman, and my perspective on the press was you couldn't lie in the press. You couldn't do it. I mean, first of all, because of libel laws, but also because there were certain ethics in being a journalist. It's like a lot of the norms that were so important to the freedom and power of this country that Trump has blown through. It was a norm in journalism. There's a journalism ethics, right, that at least my father really truly believed in and followed his whole life. And I certainly became a Republican. I recognize at this late stage of my life because my father was a Republican, and I admired my father tremendously. And so anyway, I'm a free market person, but I believe that I learned that government regulation is needed. And the example I gave about social media platforms, I think is a good one, because what's driving the social media platforms is, shareholder value, I guess. Most people would say, and of course it is the end game for the management of a publicly traded company, which I was privileged to be a part of at one time, management of a publicly traded company. And their objective is to increase shareholder value, right? The management of a publicly traded company really works for their stockholders. So So, I think the Founders Party values free enterprise. I mean, certainly, I think the founders valued free enterprise, and we recognize the value of regulating businesses. And I think America can be a country that is so wonderful to live in that people and businesses would be willing to pay a little bit more, meaning taxes in America, I think, could be a little bit higher than taxes in, let's say, Italy or Germany or England, because the Founders Party is going to really focus on giving as much power as possible to each American citizen. And I think power includes well-being, right? I mean, if we want you to be, the Founders Party wants you to be free to pursue happiness and live your life in the pursuit of happiness. And I think that means you need certain things. The social safety net needs to be stronger in the United States. I personally believe that. I've always felt harmed by America's tax laws because I've never had assets. I mean, there are certain capital gains taxes, for example, are significantly lower than income taxes. And every penny I ever made in my life was income. So I always had to pay very high tax rates. And even though I feel that I would be a lot better off today if the taxes I paid were more reasonable, I still think America's social safety net has to get stronger, and the only way to do that is by taxing people who have money. And it shouldn't be by people who have money, by the way. It should be people who make money, right? I just, this is 2026. So using $2026, for example, I think it's okay to tax the second $1 million you make every year at a pretty high rate, because if you're making $1 million a year, I mean, you're living in America, you have a fabulous life. I mean, you have a fabulous life materially. I mean, what the rest of your life is like, it's, you basically make that yourself. But if you've gotten to a stage where you earn $1 million a year, I'm fine with having that be, 35% tax rate for the first million. I mean, this is all baloney because, it needs to be analyzed, which I am sure our government is capable of doing. But we should have a fair tax policy, and we should be much more generous in helping people who are not succeeding in our country. At least it's my perspective, and I think, by the way, at the end of the day, it improves GDP rather than being a drain on it. I mean, that's probably a very long conversation and not the point of this discussion. My intent is to make a plea for a Founders Party, and the intent of the Founders Party is to bring to life the ideas of the founders, which is to optimize individual power in the hands of each American citizen. The power of the government should be in the hands of the American citizenry. That's what the founders intended. And the Founders Party means to make that happen because that's what we believe in. And if you agree to be a member of the Founders Party, you accept the responsibilities of being an American citizen, which means you do the equivalent of reading the newspaper every day, however that is. I mean, the Founders Party, if it ever gets in power, will pass laws such that no matter where you get your news from, you can be sure when they say it's news, it's truthful, right? They say opinion, they should be able to have any opinion they want, right? That's fine. But they can't say something that's untrue is a fact. You can't say that the 2020 election was stolen. You can't say that, it's a lie. So you can say, in my opinion, it was stolen, because that could be your opinion. That's not a lie. Okay? But as a fact, the election was not stolen. And that is such a significant issue in the United States of America in 2026. And I'm flabbergasted by that because I'm old school. I'm old school. I was a Republican, and I believed what I'm saying the Founders Party should be. I thought the Republican Party was. So, but obviously, so that doesn't mean I think that Trump succeeding says something that we all need to pay attention to, and that is that 77 million Americans who voted. There were probably many, many people who felt the same way but who didn't vote, voted for Trump because they were upset about the government, how the government was dealing with them. And, the Founders Party wants to address that, okay? I mean, we want every citizen to optimize their life, right? This country is, the intent of this country is to give every citizen a chance to pursue happiness. That's what the founders intended. And that's what the Founders Party will do. Okay, so, and there's a couple like fundamental things that we have learned over our 250 years that the Founders Party has to adopt. Certainly the independence of the Federal Reserve System. I mean, you have to be so ignorant not to realize what the impact, first of all, we're approaching $39 trillion in debt, right? So if the interest we pay on that debt goes up by 2 points, that's a lot of money, okay? So we pay the lowest interest of any government in the world because of the Federal Reserve independence. And that's not a guess on my part, okay? That my understanding is, and this is not my subject, so This is possibly not getting this right, but I think there were at least two countries, and I don't remember the countries, so I'm going to guess. I think one was Turkey and one was Argentina. But there are two examples in the past of governments who have interfered with the independence of their central bank, and terrible things happened to them. It's not a guess, okay, that the Federal Reserve has to be independent and run by people who understand what they're doing, monetary policy, okay, which is a complicated economic thing that needs experts to take care of it, okay? And every single American citizen benefits by the position in the world that the American dollar holds. And the only reason the American dollar holds that position is because of the independence of the Federal Reserve System. So the cost in our taxes, if nothing else, of losing the independence of the Federal Reserve is going to be devastating. Now, I don't know whether Warsh, I think the guy's name that Trump just appointed, I'm making this video Groundhog Day, February 22nd, 2026. And so we don't really know. I mean, some of my understanding is, and again, I really have not studied this potential Federal Reserve Chairman's resume, but my understanding is he has written in the past on the value of the independence of the Federal Reserve, which, I mean, if you have any kind of education about monetary policy, I mean, if you don't think that the independence of the Federal Reserve System is sacrosanct, you would fail the course, okay? You'd fail the course. I mean, it's an incredibly stupid thing for Trump to be doing, but he does a lot of incredibly stupid things, and which is why it's not Republican, it's MAGA. Republicans would not endorse tariffs. Republicans, Foundeers Party, are free market party, right? We believe, David Ricardo, that every participant in international trade benefits. Okay, so he wrote a book in 1817 that, to me, he made his point, and that was his idea that everybody participants. And I heard a famous business person. I was embarrassingly, name escapes me. I'm 81. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't accept the presidency because I'm not my cognition is declining daily. Okay, so anyway, I can't remember this guy's name, which is ridiculous because he's super famous. He's very, very wealthy. Berkshire Hathaway is his organization. Anyway, a brilliant, extremely successful person, and a person I admire and tried to learn what I could from. Anyway, he said, when asked about I think it was about Trump's tariffs, but asked some question to which the answer made sense at the time was, every country should do what they're good at and trade it. Exactly. I mean, that's exactly right. Warren Buffett finally came to me. Warren Buffett. So that's exactly right. And I mean, so I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in economics, which is certainly a million miles away from being an expert. But the independence of the Federal Reserve System is really crucial because we want this to be a prosperous country. By the way, America First, we were a lot more prosperous relatively, okay, in the world before Trump because of the tariffs. First of all, the tariffs have added about a point. My understanding, this is from Powell, not his last press conference, the one before. He said he wanted to raise interest rates, but inflation was running at about 3%. He said the core inflation is really down, almost down to 2%, which is their target. But there's another whole percentage point from tariffs. And everything I read says the tariffs really haven't come all the way through yet, that companies and exporters are eating some of those tariffs and reducing their profits. So reducing profits is not really a sustainable solution, I will say, as a person who spent a lot of time in business. So I don't know how long that's going to last, but the tariff idea is dumb in many, many ways. And America First they should just add stopping in front of it, because America First is really stopping America from being first, because we were first until those idiots took over. Okay, I mean, America ran the world. I mean, we were the major influence in NATO, in everywhere. Um, you know, America has done a pretty good job with foreign policy until Trump, right? But Trump doesn't really know anything about history, right? I mean, he wouldn't be the Neville Chamberlain he is as far as Ukraine is concerned if he knew, or if he remembered. I have a weird degree from Wharton, meaning it's not something I would brag about, but I went to a 13 class thing at Wharton, like an executive MBA kind of program. It was just 13 classes. Each class was taught by a different professor from the Wharton School of Business. And candidly, it was a fabulous experience, and I learned so much from them. But it's not a degree from Wharton, right? I mean, I'm sure my company paid a whole lot of money to say we sent the top 25 executives from my company through this program, and I was lucky enough to be one of those. I was, I think, the lowest, that they took, because I was a manager of a department at that time, and we had. I actually knew the number because of my part of my job was knowing the number of departments we had, and I think it was 54, right? So we only sent 25 folks. And we sent the president and chairman, or the CEO, who was president and chairman, and the executive vice presidents and the vice presidents, and I think I was a director at the time, and I got invited to go, which was wonderful, and it was a fabulous experience, and I treasure it. But all of that, I guess, is by way of saying I hope you'll take my word for it that there is nothing intelligent about Trump's tariff regime. In fact, it really speaks to incompetence. But of course, choosing people who are critical parts of, from my life, I would say choosing my executive vice presidents based on the sole criteria that they are 100% loyal to me and do whatever I want. That should disenfranchise me as a manager. I mean, you have to, this is something I had to do in my life, right? Was choose people to run significant parts of my organization. And it's never about loyalty. Certainly you don't want to choose somebody who purposefully wants to stab you in the back. And it's not like there aren't such people. But short of that, you're picking them because you think they're going to do a great job at it. Because if they don't, it's your fault. You're where the buck stops, right? Everything has to work well. So think about how incompetent Trump demonstrated himself to be when he chose his cabinet, and how incredibly impeachable the performance of the Republican Senate was in confirming those people. They did nothing that they were supposed to do. It was their job to advise and consent. They didn't advise Trump that the people he was putting in place were incompetent, and it was obvious that they were incompetent. So the Senate, you know, failed us completely, and all because they were afraid of being primaried by Trump. So that's the MAGA party, okay? So the Founders Party is going to, we are going to think that principle, integrity is extremely important, and we're going to value statesmanship. I mean, I would like to make Liz Cheney head of the Founders Party. I mean, talk about a selfless, statesman-like act. I mean, come on, you got to say Liz Cheney is the hero of the Trump era. And Cassidy Hutchinson, I mean, I read her book. I was so impressed with that person. I mean, anyway, the Founders Party has completely different values than what I think of as the MAGA party. And it's really intended to take the place abdicated by what used to be the Republican Party. And so I'm making this plea for some people who are much more intelligent and influential than I to grab this idea and bring the Founders Party to life, okay? I promise to be a citizen. I will take my obligations seriously. I will stay informed. I'll pay attention to the news, and I will vote. I have never failed to vote, and I will never fail to vote. So I'd like to be a member of the Founders Party, and I sure hope somebody brings it to life.